Hello everyone, and welcome to a new series I'm starting, sharing some tips for using DCS's Mission Editor. I've been putting quite a bit of time into that over the last year and a bit with these co-op campaigns I've been doing, and the Mission Editor really isn't very well explained, so I want to highlight some of the things that I found challenging at first. So today we're going to be looking at how you can make units hold position or spawn late, something that is really useful for getting the AI to seem to react to players. There are multiple different ways of doing this, and we're just going to be taking a look at all of the ones that I've been using. So first off, let's open up a new mission. So Mission Editor, create new mission, doesn't matter which map, just do Caucus, nice and easy. Now, in order to test this, we're going to need to get some trigger that will actually be causing our various events to happen. All sorts of triggers that we can use. If people want me to go through triggers in more detail, I'll be happy to do that in another video. For now, we're just going to put in a nice little placeholder trigger. And one really nice set of triggers that we can use that I use in a lot of my missions are those that are used by radio call messages. And so let's just get one of those set up. Let's get one set up so it starts from the mission start. Don't need any conditions because this is just going to trigger when everything starts up. And then we want to find this one, radio item add. We can set it for coalition or for everyone. Let's just put this for everyone, so no matter what slot we're in when we're watching this happen, it'll work fine. Now I need to put in a name for this, so let's just call this Units Go. And all the radio items are tied to a flag, which will be activated when you push the button. So in this case, let's just have this flag 1 get set to value of 1 when this radio item is selected. That's all we need to do for setting that up. Now for how we're actually going to get our units to appear, the easiest way of doing this is with late activation. This works with ground units, this works with air units as well. So we can place down a unit just as we ordinarily would. We can set up any waypoints that we want it to have. We can set up its loadout as we would want it to have. But then what we want to do is down here, tick late activation. What that will mean is this unit isn't actually spawned at the start of the game. Instead, we need some trigger to make this unit appear. Let's give this group a useful name so we can remember it. So in this case, I've just got an A10, so let's call this A10 spawn. I'll go back to triggers over on the side, and we want to enter a new trigger, one that's just going to occur once. Can put in whatever name we want, so spawn A10. Now we want some conditions added so this doesn't just trigger at the very beginning. And in this case, what we can do is have flag is true for flag 1. Now when the radio item is selected and flag 1 gets a value, this condition becomes true and this trigger will spawn. Now do be careful, you can't click off of this right now. If you click off of a trigger without putting in an action, it will automatically delete that, so you can't have this kind of saved. If you do want to save it and come back to it, just put any placeholder action, doesn't matter what you're putting in there, this is absolutely fine. This will save it there. Now what we want for our action to work is this command, group activate. Select our group, A10 spawn, so now when we use that radio item, flag 1 will become true, and our A10 will spawn in. You can have as many groups as you like assigned to this, so I've just thrown down an SU25 spawn here, and I can go back to that same trigger, clone the previous command, and then just set a new group. Now when I use that command, both of these groups will spawn together. Now the last thing we need to do is actually be able to summon these guys. We can't do that from the regular spectator seat because they don't have access to the communication menu, so we just need to add another point. So if you go over here to Battlefield Commanders, we've got this list of all sorts of slots that we can put in. let's just say I want there to be a single blue 4 observer slot. So we can check this out that this is all working, go fly mission. You will always be prompted whether you want to save or not. Just going to save this as spawn demo, so in case anything happens we can jump back to where we are. So we are loading in, we've got the observer slot that we can select. Observers can see everything on the map, and as you can see there is no planes that are currently spawned. But if I open up the comms menu and then go F10 other, I can see my units go command up there in the top corner. Press that. And there we go, these two guys spawn. And so that can be useful. As I said, we can use this with ground units or air units. Nice and quick and easy to do. The problem with this method is these units do just appear out of nowhere. That can be a bit immersion breaking if the players observe those planes appearing. Whether you've got these planes in the air or in the ground, it can look quite odd if units are suddenly appearing. So let's say you want your units to actually be visible there before they're spawned, so that players aren't jarred out of it. With ground units, there are two ways that we can do this. The easiest one is almost exactly as before. Plop down our ground unit, we tick late activation, and then we tick this one, visible before activation. As normal, we can set waypoints, do whatever we want. Once again, at the start of the game, this will not actually be an active unit. However, it will be visible and it will actually be targetable. So let's just edit our thing here. Let's change group activate to ground 1. Now our command will activate this little ground unit. Let's see how this all works. So here we have our lovely little unit. It is spawned in, it is visible, it technically exists. However, even on observer mode, you can't see it on the map. It will not make any attempt to defend itself. It will not take any actions. It can still be killed. So this is quite useful if you want to, for example, have vehicles that are set up but are meant to be unmanned. Say you want a base with a load of vehicles that if the players get to, they are completely inactive. But then you can have some trigger to activate them and have them manned and moving later. So once again, if I go units go, there we go, it's active, and it will proceed on its mission. At this point it acts like any other vehicle. Now once again, that is great if that's what you're wanting. You're wanting vehicles to act as if there's nobody in them until you activate them. There are other situations where you want your units to actually actively defend themselves even if they're holding position until a certain trigger. For ground units, the way that we can do that is instead of using late activation, we'll disable that completely, and instead we're going to use a waypoint hold command. So let's just add a new waypoint where I want these guys to stop. So let's go to waypoint 0, add a waypoint. Let's just add this ever so slightly in front of where they spawn. Now on waypoint 1 here, I go Advanced Waypoint Actions and Add. We can then go to Perform Task and add the task to Hold Position. Now what will happen is when it hits waypoint 1, this hold task will apply and it will stop moving. What I can do then is just add a stop condition for this hold command. And let's just say user flag 1 is the check means true. So now what will happen is they will move to this position. As soon as flag 1 is true, they will then start to move. Just to show that this is working correctly, I'm going to move that spawn off of our little trigger. So here we'll see at spawn the unit exists. It will move to that first waypoint. It will be actively defending itself at this point, but then when it hits that waypoint, it stops there, and it's going to stay there, doing its own thing, until we give it the order. There we go, and now it's going to proceed on its way. Very useful for if you want, say, a convoy to move through certain points and then hold position for a while, or if you're wanting enemies to be able to set up a big land ambush at a certain point in the mission, and you want them to defend themselves in case the player comes across them a little bit early. And so then the question is, well, what about aircraft? How can we do something similar with aircraft? Well, there are two ways depending on if you want the aircraft to be waiting in the air or if you want the aircraft to be starting up on the ground. So waiting in the air, let's say I wanted this thing to exist, this A10 to exist from the beginning, but I don't want it actually moving until later. Well, once again, we put a waypoint where we want it to stop, in this case waypoint 1, add an advanced waypoint action. So with aircraft there is no hold command, but orbit does pretty much the same thing. So we just set an orbit task there. We can tell it to do a racetrack pattern, circle, anchored, however we want this to behave. And then once again we can use a stop condition here. Flag 1 is on. And so what will happen now, this A10 will go to this point and it will then just orbit it continuously until we give it a flag. So here we go, the A10 is spawned right from the start. Fast forward time a little bit, it'll fly to that first waypoint. And then it will begin its lovely little orbit, and it will stay in this orbit until we tell it to do otherwise. So we'll use our same trigger. Well, let it complete its loop. And just so we can see, it's just going to happily loop infinitely until I push units go, and it stops that orbit command and goes to the next thing. That can be really useful if you want your air units to hold position for a little while. Main thing I would say to be aware of here is that your units will be using up fuel as they do this, and especially jets can run out of fuel very quickly. Now, one solution to this is that you can go to the first point that your aircraft is on. We can then go down to perform command and then go down to unlimited fuel. That means your aircraft will then have limitless fuel from that position, and so that means you can leave it there orbiting as much as you want without worrying that the AI is going to crash and burn. Downside is that that means that it doesn't have a limit on fuel, so this might be a bit punishing for your players if you send them against, say, a MiG-29 that all of a sudden has infinite fuel. What you can do to get around this is, let's say I want to turn fuel back on as soon as we leave this position. Well, I add another waypoint after waypoint 1, set it a short distance away, and this point on waypoint 1, go perform command, unlimited fuel, and this time I check value off. So now what will happen is it starts with unlimited fuel, has unlimited fuel on its orbit, but as soon as it goes to waypoint 2, the unlimited fuel will be turned off and it'll start draining its tanks. It's not a perfect solution, but it can be quite a good flexible solution. Unfortunately with that one, again, your unit is starting in the air. Lots of times you don't want units starting in the air. The most common time that you're wanting air units to appear is going to be if the units are on the ground. Now we can use the late activation just as we did before. Let's go take a lovely F5 here. So to put the unit on the ground, I just changed the starting waypoint type from a turning point to takeoff. And I could have this taking off from the ramp. And I could check late activation. That would work fine. Just as before, I can activate it the same way. The problem is, once again, this unit will just appear at this point. That's fine if you're sure your players are going to be nowhere near this, but if this is an airfield that they might be within visual range when this triggers, it does look a bit weird if all of a sudden planes appear on the runway. Equally, it can be frustrating to players if they have taken an unusual route through your mission. They've, say, bombed the hell out of this airfield, and then later these aircraft spawn. It feels a bit like the system's cheating. The way we can get around this and have a unit that is on the ground staying still until we turn it on is, instead of late activation, we use this command, Uncontrolled. This is almost the same as having late activation and visible before activation with a ground unit, just with a plane. So this is an aircraft here that will not move, not do anything, not get started. It will be sitting there. It is vulnerable to damage though, and it will be able to be shot, be able to be destroyed. All of that was no problem at all. The issue is we can't activate this with a simple activate control. Instead, what we need to do is set up an AI triggered action. To do that, we click this funny little symbol here, and then we go add. Then under perform commands, what you want to do is add a new task for start. You can name this if you want to differentiate between multiple start commands. If there's only going to be one start command per unit, you don't really need to name this. Either way, that is now set. So Aerial 1, let's just name this F5. That now has this in its set of actions. Now this will do nothing on its own. This is just a kind of a hidden command. But what this now lets you do, if we go back to triggers, all of the actions for my previous trigger were deleted, so it's auto-deleted that trigger. So we'll just set up a new one. Let's call this one Scramble. Condition the exact same as before. Flag 1 is true. But now to access this, what we want to do is action, and we want AI task push. AI task set also works in a very similar way. The documentation is a little unclear of the exact differences, but the general consensus that I've seen is AI task push will get the AI to abandon whatever it is currently doing and do that task. So it will interrupt its current action. Very good if you want to make sure it does the thing. AI task set will add it to the queue, which means it might complete its current action. I generally use AI task push here in the way that I use these triggers. Either way, we then have AI actions, and this will list all of the AI actions for all of your various units. It gives you the group name, and then it gives you the number and the type of command, and if you put a name in, it would have the name displayed here as well. In this case, I want F5 start, and that's all I need to do. Now we can load in. And see, here we go. Here's our lovely little F5. It acts as if it is alive. The bunkers even open up because I've detected an active unit there. But as you see, there's nobody in it. It's not going to start up. It's just sitting there waiting until I go to unit go. Then all of a sudden, hey, look, someone's appeared. As you may just be able to hear, he is starting his engine cycle. So he will go through the normal startup procedure, it will all get warmed up, and then as soon as he's done with that, he will proceed on his mission. Really good if you're wanting to get the kind of a airfield scramble where units will be there on the airfield and then will scramble under certain conditions, but still giving your players the options to get in a little bit early and take these things out before they get off the ground. But yeah, that's all of the methods that I have been using to put in these delayed spawns, whether it's for ground vehicles or air vehicles. Some are easier than others, but they all have their own little advantages and disadvantages. If you have any questions about this, please do leave them down below. If you have any questions about the mission editor in general that you'd like me to cover in a future video, do let me know. And if you're interested in seeing the kind of missions that I've cooked up using my various tricks here, there are several playlists on the channel right now of the co-op campaigns we've been doing in the past. At the time of recording, we are running through the Clipsy SARS campaign, which I've been using these techniques extensively, largely to do convoys that will stop in certain positions, or cap flights that will scramble as soon as our guys get into the wrong place. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you found this useful. Do consider leaving a like or a comment, really does help the channel. And otherwise, I hope to catch you in a future video. Till then, remember to be kind to yourselves and everyone else. Cheers.